Hey everyone, on this episode of the Broker Link, we're talking with Rod Frizzell. He is the Life Insurance Director here at the Brokerage Inc. We're going to be talking about selling insurance without being salesy. A lot of insurance agents struggle with different things such as cross-selling and just prospecting in general because they don't want to come across as salesy. There's really a lot you can learn from somebody like Rod. I'm so really excited to be talking to him today, so stay tuned for more.
Welcome to the Broker Link podcast, where agents go to grow their insurance business.
All right. Hey, Rod, we have you over the phone. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Gil, and how are you today?
I'm doing good. Just adjusting to this COVID stuff. I think we're almost getting back to normal, though. It seems that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Whatever the normal's going to be this day and time, who knows what that is? But anyway, to get back to some type of normality, I think is the main thing.
Definitely. Okay, so let's just learn a little bit about you. We've had you on before. For those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into the industry, what all you've done, and just tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been in the business for 38 years. July, I'm going to have to start saying 39 years, which is a long time, by most standards anyway. And the way I got into the business, I actually I've got my degree, my bachelor's in finance and insurance. The University of Arkansas offered a program in it. I had a meeting with an advisor, Dr. Bob Hall. Went in and he asked me how I did in accounting. I said, not real well. He said, you ought to look into insurance. He said, your grades in your finance classes are pretty good. And I said, what does not doing good in accounting have to do with insurance? And he says, people that aren't good in accounting typically are good in insurance because our ledgers are totally opposite to the rest of the world's. Meaning when we bring something on, when you would think it would be an asset like a policy, it's really a liability. So anyway, I took a risk class, enjoyed it, and ended up changing my major and got into insurance. Got my degree, went to work for Home Life Insurance Company in their group department. Worked for them for 20 years, and then that was late 90s when you were doing when all the demutualizations were going on, and changing them over to the stock carriers. All the carriers became stock companies, and they started buying and selling a lot, and we got sold off and all that, and I decided to go out and do something else. So anyway, I went to the brokerage and worked there for a while, and then I got an offer to go run a limited med division for Reliance Standard. Did that 2 years, and then the founder of the brokerage, Ross Hopkins, he said, hey, you want to come back over and do some things with life and all that? And anyway, I came back over, and that's where I'm at. That's where I've been.
Awesome. Well, let's talk to the insurance agents out there. You know, like I said, the topic is selling insurance without being salesy. You've had a lot of experience in insurance. And from all that experience, what would you say is the greatest weakness you've seen among insurance agents?
The greatest weakness, I think, and I think it runs pretty consistently, is and I'm not going to say inability, but the fear of asking your client questions. To me, it has been an issue. I always try to relate it back to a lot of common sense errors. I always use, because everybody's gone to the garage to have their car fixed, a garage mechanic, if you will. And, the first thing the mechanic does, he doesn't just tell you to start your car and he listens to the engine. That's the way they used to do it. I had an uncle that could do that and tell you what's wrong with your car. He plugs a diagnostic in and to tell you what cylinder's not hitting, whatever it's the timing chain, whatever it may be. And that's the same thing with insurance, is you've got to find out if they have a need. And the only way you're really going to do that is by asking them questions. And for some reason, I think there are so many agents And I think that's where you really separate the career agents from people that just come into the business and, they come in and they bail out, because they don't ask their client questions. Um, so, I think that one of the main reasons for failure is, just the ability just to ask your client questions to find out, what you can do to help them. Whatever area it may be, whether it be on the medical side, whether it be on the life side, whether it be on the retirement side. When you look at it on our side of the house, meaning non-property and casualty, I've always said, that there's three walls that you have to build around each one of your clients. And one is if they get sick, that they're, catastrophically, it doesn't destroy them, monetarily, financially. Second thing is what happens in the event that they die, a premature death, that their family can continue to live the life that they're accustomed to. And the third thing is, loss of income and or retirement. Income and retirement go hand in hand. I think those are the three things that the agent has to let the client know. This is what I do for a living. This is me as a professional. This is my career.
Mm-hmm. Let's make this like real for the agents listening to this right now. Let's just use you and me as an example. Let's say I am the prospect. Why don't you take a minute and ask me some questions and sort of get a needs analysis of me. Let's see if we do that for a minute.
Okay. Well, Gillen, I think, the first, I'm going to start out with the basic questions first. Are you married?
I'm not.
Okay. Have you been married?
I have.
Okay. Do you have any children?
I do not.
Okay. Do you have any big assets that you're still paying on, whether it be a student loan, whether it be a mortgage on a house, duplex, condo, whatever?
Yeah, I've got about $10,000 on the student loan. That's the only the major debt.
All right. Well, let's put the 10,000 down here. What about other debt that you could have out there?
Yeah, I got a little bit of credit card. It's 0% right now, but it's there right now. So that's about $3,000 or $4,000 there.
Okay. Anything else you got out there?
I have a truck lease, so I think the note on that, I don't know how all that works, but that's something.
Yeah, you'll have to pay that lease off. I'm going to guess if it's anywhere normal, it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of $15,000 to $20,000. Now, do you have what about or will you be responsible for your parents as they age?
Sadly, that will probably end up happening. Yeah. I hope that's not a big factor, but I think that'll be part of my life. Yeah.
Okay. When you get into caring for a family member, it gets very expensive. I just literally watched a webinar this morning on long-term care. Now, I don't think you're a candidate for the long-term care, but with your parents being that, and, when you go off of it, you're talking about, in their example, they were using, it must be a nice facility. They were saying to figure on a male to figure about $300,000, on a female to figure about $500,000 for a long-term care benefit. So some of that from your parents are going to have to fall into your lap. If something were to happen to you, you need to be sure that you've got that insured. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a sister.
Okay. Do you think your sister will be able to take care of them if something happened to you?
Probably not. No.
Financially, so I would recommend that you put couple $100,000 down for that, $100,000. The nice thing about it is just in this little bit that we talked right here, Gil, and I'm doing my math here. You probably in the neighborhood of $150,000 that you would need in the event that something were to happen to you. That student debt's got to be paid off. You don't want to leave that for your parents or your sister to pay. Your truck payment has to be paid off. You don't want to leave that. wouldn't you like to leave something, for your sister or your parents so that, you can pay your part of their care? God forbid, but in the event that they did have to go into a facility and somebody had to pay for that. And you will be blown away at the cost of this. At your age, you're probably going to be able to get that for under $20 a month.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, right there, that's just talking. Now you're doing two things there. To me, I'm getting to know you.
Yeah.
Okay, just by asking those questions, and I'm not asking anything. And especially most of the times when agents do go in, and I'm going to get off the role play here for a minute. But when they go in, they probably have a contract or have some other policy that they sold. And with that client, I mean, so many of them do. And when you do, that client has shared, because so many times the agents, well, I don't want to get too personal. Well, they've shared with you, especially if you've got their medical insurance, they've shared with you most of their personal stuff. The medications that they're on, the doctors that they go see.
Mm-hmm.
So that, you know a good piece about them anyway. You just have to get into finances. And you're not doing it to go. And, and I always say this, when somebody tells you something about their finances, you have an obligation, the law, that you can't repeat that to other people.
Right.
So ask them the questions and find out. But to me, that right there, that just, that came in. Now, it's what's going to happen on that, Gillen. Right now, you're young and all that, and you're going, and, you've got, you do have needs that needs to be replaced from a life insurance standpoint. If you have the money, absolutely. The funding a long-term care policy right now would be something that would be great. The problem is a lot of people your age doesn't have that type of money. And so you talk. But the thing that I would do is, Gillen, is what I would like to do is, at some point, I would like you to ask your parents if they thought about what's going to happen if they had to go into a home.
Yeah.
Because it's what I'm going to do is, if you say that, you're going to say, hey, Rod, why don't you give my dad a call?
Mm-hmm.
Here's his number. He wants to talk to you about this. So just in those conversations, you get, more and more, more leads. I mean, that's the thing. And don't get me wrong, Gil, and there's a lot of instances, if you didn't have any debt, if you didn't have any student loan debt, you didn't have a truck payment that needed to be paid off, and your parents were 100%. You're a Rockefeller. You might not have a life insurance need. And guess what? I've got to be prepared to say, well, Gillen, you don't really have any needs right now, or anything that I'm going to be able to help you with. But if anything changes, give me a call, and I'm going to hand you my business card.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to walk away. So I think too many times that agents and advisors and all, they, if they're talking to somebody and they're going in to see somebody, they feel like if they don't get a sale, they've wasted their time. And that's not true. Because if you go in and you communicate with that person and you do even walk out without getting an app and a check, guess what? You've let that person know, hey, you didn't need anything. You've really done a good job. But when that person's parents or that person's children or somebody come to them and says, you know something, why don't you give old Rod a call? He came out here and he went over all this stuff with me, and he never tried to sell me anything. That's where we get away with being the salesy, the trying not to make it so salesy, is ask legitimate questions.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, and I'm glad I asked you to do that, because for those listening, me sitting there listening to Rod ask me those questions, I didn't feel any pushiness. I didn't feel like he was pressuring me. And even asking the questions about my parents, I felt like he genuinely was trying to care. That's how you came across to me.
Well, and I think that's the main thing, Gil. And I'm going to say this, and I know it seems like it goes in that direction, every time we talk. But, I'm the caregiver to my mother. And my mother, she just turned 88. She had a stroke 4 years ago. Mom doesn't have any money. Mom didn't have any insurance. Dad passed away because she was a housewife. And, this has fallen in my lap. And it really is financially, it is difficult to be able to take care of that. And when you can live it, live what you're talking to people about, that's the key thing to me. It's not, I'm not trying to find information out about you personally. I'm trying to find out information that I can take of yours to be able to help you.
Right, right.
Not have to go down the path that a lot of people go down. When you look at it, you look at with this coronavirus that's going around, and with all the people, the unemployment thing, the people that are screaming, my heart goes out. But so many of those people, and I forget what the number is, but it's a ridiculous number, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90% of the Americans today, they have less than $2,000 in a savings account. Now you think about that.
Yeah.
That's, if something happens devastating, whether it be an illness, whether it be a premature death, loss of job or whatever, there's not the money there for them to be able to continue their standard of living, at least for a while. And that's all you get. That's all you're trying to do is bridge them, through, whether it be a life insurance, a disability claim, long-term care claim, or a medical plan.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So I feel like this is a good way, just first of all, to display how to sell insurance without being salesy. A lot of agents get caught up with the idea of how do I get in front of people to begin with. That's marketing, that's prospecting. That's not the purpose of this conversation. What matters is once you get in front of people, that's where you have the ability to take it where you want to go. And so I think a lot of agents focus so much on the marketing aspect, and they don't do enough time focusing on the sales aspect. Because that's why I feel like our industry has that reputation of the annoying salesman. You just think of the picture of that pushy sales guy that you don't want to show up at your house.
Yeah, well, and Gillen, and I think that's a very, very valid point. And I go back to, because so many people in this industry, that's what when they go in to see somebody, I'm going to sell them something. I don't know what I'm going to sell, but I'm going to sell them something. And they don't look at their needs. That's when you go. That's the salesman you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's the salesman of I don't care what it is, they're going to buy something from me. Well, you can't take that approach. If you were selling cars and somebody pulled up in a relatively brand new car and all that, are they really a prospect for you? Well, if they get out and you can see that there's they've got a younger kid with them and all that, that's dad going to buy, the daughter or the son a new car because they just graduated from high school. Yeah, you might have a prospect. But if they get out by themselves, the chances are they're not, because he doesn't need one.
Right, right.
And and I think that's what you've got to do. I've said it numerous times. The first thing you have to do in salesmanship 101, the first thing they teach you is to create a need. Okay, when it comes to insurance, especially life insurance, it's really the need is there. You just have to point it out to them.
Right.
They don't realize it because nobody, at least maybe I'm abnormal, but I'm going to think the majority of your people, they don't sit around and think, man, what if I die? Unless they get a very, an illness, and then, can I buy insurance? My house is on fire. Well, it's too late at that point.
Right.
So that's where I think that you've got to do it. I think you've got to, you've got to just talk to them. Just talk to them like you're going in meeting somebody. And, and statistics show. Limerick did a study. Now, this was back in, I want to say it was back in 13, so 7 years old. But, they did a study, and it said that 78% of the clients bought a life insurance policy from an agent that they had a former relationship with. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now you think about that. 78%. Now that relationship, it didn't say that they were a former client that they had a relationship with. So it could be somebody that was on your son's Little League baseball team, or on your daughter's gymnastics team, or on your daughter's soccer team, or on your son's football team. You had a relationship with them, and you go down and you sit down and you ask, what do you do for a living? And as I said, I was just listening to this webinar, and Chris, the guy that was doing it, he said that he said, because long-term care is the same way, is you've got to ask people about it, and they did a survey. They actually did a survey, and this survey, and let me tell you, they sell over $3 billion of this stuff a year. His company does, and their survey that they did last year asked the people, why did you buy this policy? 70% of those people said, because my agent pointed it out to me.
Mm. Yeah, I guess they don't even know it's a thing probably until somebody tells them about it.
They don't, and so many people think it's so expensive, and it's not that expensive. But he said, and to go on and finish where I was going with that, he said when he's at a social event and people always come and say, hey, what do you do for a living? The old conversation, what do you do? What do you do? We've all been in that situation. He says, you know what I do? I make it available to where you are going to be talking with your brother and your sister at your parents' funeral.
Yeah.
Now, with him saying that, is what that does is, like he said, they're like, what does that mean? What do you do? And then he goes into his long, because here's the thing. So many people, getting back to why we're having this conversation in the first place, is a lot of people, I sell insurance, and they run over 3 or 4 tables getting away from you, because they don't want you to have to push it down to, they, oh God, insurance salesman, he's going to try to sell me. Once again, that's a reputation that's developed from the people that go in. I'm going to sell them something, whether they need it or not. I'm going to sell it to them. And I think that's where you see the true professionals, as opposed to, the people that just, they take a quick ride through this business and they're out of it 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I think if we start to wrap up the segment, I think what we can really take away from all this is, and it's something that you've said before, but I think it's important we keep reminding agents, you need to do a needs analysis. Your job is not to walk in and say, hey, I'm selling something. It's how can I meet this person's needs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Gil, and that's the key to it, because here's the first thing is, you do and I call it a fact finder, client profile, whatever it is. But, and we've got a bunch of them on the website. Get that filled out. You're gathering information to find out if they do need. And then when you do, take a need, because when you look at it, the underinsured, the uninsured, and the underinsured for life insurance in this country is on the ozone. There's a statistic that said that in 2013, that there were fewer individual life insurance policies in force, individual now, not group policies, but there were fewer individual life insurance policies in force in 2013 than there were at the end of the World War II. And the population, I think, had tripled at that point. Don't hold me to that number, but the population had gained a lot. And that's just because we don't go and talk to the people. We don't let them know. And then when you find out, just like I did with you, now because you weren't married, you didn't have kids, you didn't have a mortgage, you didn't have any of these other things, that's when you do a needs analysis and find out how much do you need?
Mm-hmm.
How much insurance do you need? Because when somebody walks in and says, hey, man, I've got a $200,000 policy here for you, Rod. I want you to look at it. I'm looking at them like, why do you think 200,000 is I need that much? Or why do you think that that's enough? But so in my mind, now I've been around insurance my whole life. In my mind, what do I say? I go, I bet you need that. I bet if I look at that premium, that's about what you needed to qualify for that company's trip that you're real close to getting. So I mean, that's that's the thing that runs through people's minds.
Yeah.
But you go in and you let that person tell you how much they need. I mean, the agents will call. Well, he said he wanted, or she said she wanted $200,000 policy. Did you ask them why? Why do you want a $200,000 policy? What are you trying to insure? Because that tells you the type of product too. That's the next step.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I think this is a good takeaway. I don't want to beat the horse and just over talk about it, but I think this was really, really good. And I appreciate your time today and just actually giving them an example real time. They got to hear you prospect and sell to me just now. And I think that was really good for everybody to hear what that really sounds like in real life.
So I tell you what, Gil, when we wrap it up here, then you stay on the line and I'll get the information, take this application on you too. Okay.
Okay. I might write it myself since I do have a license.
Always got to go for the close. But
all right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in on this episode of the Broker Link, where we encourage agents to sell more, earn more, and stay independent. Remember to check us out at thebrokerageinc.com, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Broker Link podcast, hosted by The Brokerage Inc. Join us again next week with new information about growing your business.